was a cold night in October. Sarah was standing alone at a bus stop on a quiet country road in England. She had just finished visiting her friend who lived far from the city. Now she was waiting for the last bus to take her home. The air was cold and fog slowly covered the road like a thick white blanket. Sarah pulled her coat tighter around her and checked her phone. No signal. She looked at the bus schedule posted on the glass wall of the bus stop. The last bus should have come at 10:15 p.m., but now it was 10:40 p.m. The road was silent. No cars, no people. Just the sound of wind moving through the trees and the soft ticking of the street lamp above her. Then she heard something. Step, step, step. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from the fog behind the bench. She turned around, quickly. No one. She looked around carefully. The fog made it hard to see more than a few meters. The air felt colder now. "Hello?" she called out. Silence. Then the lights of the bus stop began to flicker. Once, twice, then steady again. Her heart started to beat faster. "I'm just tired," she said to herself. "I'll wait 5 more minutes." She sat on the bench, trying not to be afraid. She played a small game on her phone to pass the time, but the screen was lagging. The battery was almost dead. Suddenly, she felt someone sit down next to her, but she didn't hear any footsteps. She turned her head slowly. A man was sitting beside her. He looked old, very old. His skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes were dark, like deep holes. He wore old-fashioned clothes, a black coat, a hat, and shoes that looked wet. Sarah's throat felt dry. "Are you waiting for the bus too?" she asked. The man didn't answer. Then, in a whisper, he said, "The bus only comes for the dead." Sarah blinked. "What?" She turned to look at him again, but he was gone. The bench beside her was empty. Her heart was pounding. She stood up quickly. No, this isn't real," she whispered to herself. Just then, she saw lights in the fog. Headlights. A bus. But it looked strange, old, black, and rusty. The windows were dirty. The sound it made was like a groan, not a motor. It stopped, in front of her without making a noise. The door opened slowly with a hiss. Inside, she saw people. They were staring at her. Their faces were pale. Some had blank eyes. One woman had no mouth. Another man's head looked broken, twisted the wrong way. None of them moved. Sarah felt frozen in place. She couldn't move her feet. She just stood there staring at them. Then someone from inside the bus said, "Are you ready to go?" Her breath caught in her throat. She turned and ran. She didn't look back. She didn't stop. Not even when she heard the sound of the bus door closing. The next day, she told people in the nearby village. An old man in a small cafe listened, quietly. Then he said, "That bus stop was shut down 50 years ago. A crash happened there. Everyone on the bus died." Sarah didn't say a word. She knew what she saw. And she knew one thing for sure. That bus was still out there, waiting in the fog, waiting for someone new. 3 days had passed since Sarah ran away from the bus stop. She was still shaken. She couldn't sleep well at night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the people on that bus, especially one of them, the woman with no mouth. Sarah stayed at her parents' house in the village. It was warm and safe there, but even during the day she kept thinking about what happened. She wanted to believe it was just a bad dream, but it wasn't. She knew it was real. She had felt it, the cold, the fear, the presence of something, not human. One morning, her curiosity became stronger than her fear. She decided to go back to the bus stop. It was still foggy when she got there. The same cold wind touched her skin. The sign was still there, half broken, rusted, and dirty. The bench where she sat that night was empty. She stood there for a while, just looking around. There were no footsteps, no buses, no lights. Then she noticed something. On the ground near the bench, there was a white scarf. She picked it up. It was soft but old, like it had been there for years. Suddenly, she heard a soft sound, like crying. A woman's cry. It was coming from behind the trees. Sarah froze. The crying got louder, sad, heartbreaking. She stepped closer, slowly. The fog was thick, but she could see a shape. A person, standing alone among the trees. "Hello?" Sarah called. "Out." The crying stopped. The woman turned around. She wore a long coat. Her hair was black and wet. Her eyes were wide and filled with pain. And her face, she had no mouth. Sarah gasped. She stepped back, but her foot slipped. She fell to the ground. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it would stop. The woman walked closer, not fast but steady. Her feet didn't make a sound on the ground. Sarah tried to get up, but something pulled her leg, like cold hands grabbing her ankle. She screamed and kicked, finally standing up and running toward the road. She ran and didn't stop until she reached a gas station a few kilometers away. The man at the counter looked shocked. "Miss, are you okay? You look pale as a ghost." Sarah was shaking. "Did you ever hear about a woman with no mouth near the old bus stop?" The man paused, then nodded slowly. "I've heard of her. Years ago. Locals say she died in the bus crash." Her face was crushed. She walks the fog now, looking for her voice, looking for help. Sarah felt sick. "What does she want?" she asked. "No one knows," the man said. "But some say if she finds you once, she'll come back again." That night, Sarah locked every window and door. She didn't sleep. She sat in her room, staring out the window. The fog was back, and she swore, just for a second. She saw the shape of a woman standing across the street, watching her. Sarah hadn't left the house in 2 days. She kept the curtains closed. She kept the lights on, even during the day. She hardly ate. Every time she looked out the window, she felt like someone was watching her. She couldn't forget the woman with no mouth. The memory of her wide, sad eyes, her pale face, it haunted Sarah day and night. But something else was bothering her now. Since the night she returned from the bus stop, she started hearing whispers. Very soft, very close. At first, she thought it was her imagination. But now, she wasn't so sure. That morning, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with her mom. Her mom was reading the newspaper. Sarah just stared at her cold tea. "You're not yourself, Sarah," her mom said gently. "Do you want to talk about it?" Sarah looked at her. She opened her mouth to speak, but then whispers right in her ear. But no one was near her. She jumped up from her chair. Her mom stood too. "Sarah, what's wrong? Did you hear that?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Hear what?" "The voice. It whispered to me. Right here." She pointed beside her head. Her mom gave her a worried look. "Sweetheart, there's no one here." Later that afternoon, Sarah decided she needed answers. She remembered something the man at the gas station said. Locals say she died in the bus crash. Sarah went to the village library. She asked the librarian about the bus crash. The woman nodded and brought out an old newspaper from 1975. Headline: "Tragic crash kills all passengers on late-night bus." Sarah read the names of the victims. One name caught her eye. Mary Hensley, age 34, a school teacher. Body found near an old tree by the bus stop. Her face was badly injured, unrecognizable. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "That must be her," she asked the librarian. "Do you know where that tree is?" The woman nodded slowly. "Yes, it still stands. Locals call it the whispering tree. Some say the wind through its branches sounds like voices." That evening, as the sun began to fall, Sarah walked back to the bus stop. She followed a small dirt path behind it. After 5 minutes, she saw it, a tall, dark tree. Its branches reached up like arms. The leaves didn't move, but the air around it felt alive. Sarah stepped closer. Her hands were shaking. She placed the white scarf, the one she found, on the ground near the roots. "I know who you are," she said. "You're Mary. You didn't get to go home that night. You died here. and now you're lost. The wind picked up. The tree began to whisper. Words floated through the air, so soft and so close. Help me. Sarah froze. Find my voice. Then, something moved behind the tree. The woman with no mouth stepped out. But this time she looked calmer. Her hands were not reaching out. Her eyes looked sad, but not angry. Sarah didn't run. She stood still. Mary raised one hand, slowly pointing at her own throat. Sarah understood. You want to speak? She whispered. Mary nodded. Suddenly, her mouth began to open. Slowly, painfully. A thin, black fog came out of her lips. Sarah stepped back. Then the woman vanished into the air like smoke. The tree went silent. The wind stopped. Sarah was alone again. As she walked back to the road, Sarah heard one last whisper in the wind. Thank you. But she knew this wasn't over. Something else was waiting. Sarah thought the nightmare was over. After helping the spirit of Mary Hensley, the woman with no mouth, Sarah hoped the whispers would stop. For 2 days, everything seemed normal again. No strange sounds, no figures in the fog. She slept well, she ate her meals. She even laughed again with her mom. But deep down, she knew the truth. The bus hadn't left, and it wasn't just Mary. There were others. On the third night, Sarah was sitting in her room reading when she heard a sound from outside. Not footsteps, not whispers. A knock. 3 soft knocks on her window. She looked up quickly. Her window faced the street. There was no balcony, no ledge. No one should be able to knock from the outside. She got up and peeked through the curtain. Nothing. But when she turned away, she noticed something strange on the window glass. A handprint, wet and dark, like it had come from the fog. The next day, Sarah decided to go back to the bus stop. She didn't know why. Something pulled her there, like an invisible hand. It was late afternoon when she arrived. The air was cold. Fog had already started to form around the trees. She walked past the bench and stood in the same spot where she had seen the ghost bus. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then she heard a sound. A soft cracking noise. Crack. Snap. Crack. It came from the woods nearby. She turned to look and saw a man standing under the trees. He was tall and thin. His clothes were torn. His face was pale like the woman before. But the worst part was his neck. It was broken, bent at a sharp, unnatural angle. His head leaned far to the side, almost resting on his shoulder. His eyes stared at Sarah, empty and cold. She couldn't move. He began to walk toward her. Step, drag, step, drag. One of his legs didn't move right. It dragged along the ground, making a horrible scraping noise. Sarah turned and ran back to the village. That night she asked her mother about the bus crash again. Do you remember hearing about a man with a broken neck? Sarah asked. Her mom looked uncomfortable. She nodded. Yes, his name was Thomas Gale. He was a doctor. People said he died instantly when the bus flipped. His neck snapped. Some say his ghost still walks the woods, Sarah whispered. I saw him. Her mom looked frightened. Sarah, don't go back there, please. But Sarah couldn't stop. Something had changed inside her. She didn't just want to escape the ghosts. She wanted to understand them. The next morning, Sarah went to the small village church. Inside, she met the old priest, Father Wilkins. He had lived in the area his whole life. When she told him about the bus stop and the ghosts, he didn't laugh. He didn't tell her she was crazy. Instead, he said something strange. They are not haunting the place because they are angry, he said. They're still trapped. The road, the fog, the bus, it's all a prison. Can I help them? Sarah asked. The priest nodded. Maybe. But it won't be easy, and it's not safe. You must learn what holds them here. Sarah left the church with a heavy heart. That night, she dreamed of the bus again, but this time, she was inside it. The woman with no mouth sat beside her, and across the aisle, the man with the broken neck turned his twisted head and smiled. Sarah woke up from the dream with sweat on her face. She had dreamed of sitting inside the ghost bus, the woman with no mouth beside her, the man with the broken neck smiling at her, and someone else, the bus driver. He hadn't spoken. He didn't move, but his eyes met hers through the rearview mirror. They were not human. They were black, endless, and when he looked at her, she felt cold all over, like she was drowning in ice. That morning, Sarah wrote everything she remembered in a notebook. She drew the faces of the spirits. She wrote down their names, what they looked like, what they wanted. She was trying to understand them. She remembered what Father Wilkins said. The bus, the fog, the road, it's a prison. And someone had to be the warden. Someone had to control the prison. The driver. Sarah went to the town records office. She asked to see reports from the 1975 crash. After an hour of searching, she found something strange. The names of all the passengers were listed, but the name of the bus driver was missing. She asked the woman at the desk, "Why isn't the driver's name here?" The woman frowned. "I don't know. Maybe it was lost." "Was the driver ever found?" The woman shook her head. "No body, no trace. Some say he disappeared before the crash. Others say he still drives." Sarah felt a chill down her spine. That night, she returned to the bus stop. It was foggy again. The sky was dark. She brought a flashlight and her notebook. She sat on the bench, waiting. After a few minutes, the air changed. It became colder. Still. Then, the sound of an engine, old, heavy, echoing through the fog. The black bus appeared once more, its lights glowing like two eyes in the night. It stopped in front of her. The door opened. This time, Sarah didn't run. She stepped closer and looked. Inside, the same pale passengers sat silently in their seats. Their eyes turned toward her, and there he was, behind the wheel. The driver. He wore a dark cap and uniform. His face was hidden by shadow, but she saw his mouth. It was smiling. A wide, unnatural smile. "Are you ready?" he asked. His voice was like metal scraping against glass. Sarah stepped back. "I want to know what you are," she said bravely. The driver tilted his head. "I'm the one who takes them home," he said. "But home is very far now." "Why are they trapped here?" she asked. "They missed their stop," the driver said. "Now they ride forever." Sarah looked at the passengers. Their eyes begged for help. "Can I free them?" The driver's smile faded. He stared at her with cold eyes. "You're not ready," he said. "Not yet." Then the door slammed shut. The bus vanished into the fog without a sound. Sarah stood alone on the road, heart pounding. She had spoken to the driver. He was real. And now she knew more. The passengers were trapped because they missed their stop. But maybe, if she found out what their stop was, she could help them get off the bus. She would start with the woman with no mouth, and the man with the broken neck. The next morning, Sarah packed a bag. She was going to visit the place where the bus crashed 50 years ago. Maybe the answers were still there. Maybe the past hadn't forgotten her. The morning fog was still thick when Sarah left the village. She followed an old map she found in the town records office. It showed the original bus route from 1975, including a small road that curved deep into the woods. At the end of that road was a red mark. Crash site, it said. Sarah knew this was where it happened, where all those people died, where the bus and the driver disappeared. She packed a flashlight, water, her notebook, and a small first aid kit. Her hands shook as she zipped the bag shut. Her mom asked her to stay home, but Sarah gently said no. "I need to finish this," she said. "I need to help them." The walk to the crash site took over an hour. The deeper she went into the woods, the quieter everything became. No birds, no animals, only wind and fog. Finally, she found it. The trees suddenly opened into a wide, empty space. The ground was covered with dead leaves and broken glass. Bits of metal poked out of the dirt like bones. A twisted bus mirror, a wheel rim, a torn piece of seat cushion. This was it. The crash site. Sarah stood still for a moment. The air was cold, heavy. It felt like the ground itself remembered the pain. She knelt beside a rusted metal piece and brushed the dirt away. That's when she heard it. A whisper, soft and weak, like a voice from under the ground. Help. She turned quickly. No one was there. But the whisper came again. Can't leave. Then, the ground beneath her shook slightly. She looked down and saw something. A small silver chain, half buried in the dirt. She pulled it out. It was a necklace, a locket. She opened it. Inside was a picture of a woman. She looked familiar. It was Mary Hensley, the woman with no mouth. And on the other side of the locket, there was a tiny note. Going home to see Mom. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Mary had been on her way to see her mother. That was her stop, her reason for the ride. But she never made it. Sarah wrote the discovery in her notebook, Mary's unfinished journey, home to her mother. That's what kept her trapped. Then she heard a new sound. Step, drag, step, drag. She turned around and saw him again. The man with the broken neck, Thomas Gale. He walked out of the fog toward the crash site. His head hung to the side. His eyes were full of sadness. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood others. More passengers from the bus. Men, women, even a child holding a teddy bear. They stood in silence, watching her. Sarah didn't move. She took a deep breath and said, I know why you're stuck. You never got to finish your journey. You never reached your stop. Some of them looked down. One woman began to cry softly. Sarah stepped forward. I'm going to help you. I don't know how yet, but I promise I will try. Suddenly the ground shook again. The trees bent forward as a strong wind blew through the forest. The fog thickened, fast, and out of the mist came the sound of an engine. The black bus. It rolled into view, stopping in the middle of the crash site. Its door opened slowly. The driver stepped out. His smile was gone this time. You're not welcome here, he said in a cold voice. Sarah stared at him. Why are they still trapped? The driver pointed at her. Because someone like you is keeping them from letting go. You're waking them up. That's dangerous. They're not yours, she shouted. His face twisted with anger. They are mine now. This is their road, forever. Sarah stepped forward, holding up the locket. Mary had a reason to go home. You stopped her. I won't let you stop the others. The driver's eyes turned darker. Then you'll join them. Before she could move, the passengers stepped. Between her and the driver, they were protecting her. For the first time, they were no longer afraid. The driver looked at them, confused. Then, he vanished. The bus door slammed shut and the vehicle rolled back into the fog. Gone. Sarah dropped to her knees, heart racing. The passengers slowly faded, one by one, except for Thomas Gale. He stood in front of her and nodded once. Then he whispered, "Thank you," and disappeared. Sarah sat alone at the crash site, breathing hard. She had broken something, some part of the curse, but she knew it wasn't over yet. There were still more ghosts, more stories, more stops to remember, and somewhere out there, the bus was still driving. It had been 3 days since Sarah faced the bus driver at the crash site. Things had been quiet since then. The fog still came every night, but no more knocks at her window, no whispers, no broken neck man, no Mary. But Deep inside, Sarah knew the bus wasn't gone, and it wasn't finished. That evening, Sarah returned to the library. She wanted to find one more name, the last face she remembered from the bus, a small child. He had sat alone in seat number 9. He held a teddy bear in his lap. He didn't move. He didn't blink. But his eyes were full of tears. Sarah opened the old newspaper again and searched carefully. Near the bottom of the list of victims, she found him. Name, Jacob Granger, age 6. Traveling with, unknown status. Lost and never identified until after crash, Xiao. Felt her heart break. A 6-year-old boy. Alone on a late-night bus. No parents listed, no guardian. Only a teddy bear and silence. She visited Father Wilkins again. "Do you know anything about a boy named Jacob Granger?" she asked. The priest closed his eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "I was a young man when the crash happened. Everyone talked about the boy. The police couldn't find his parents. Some said he ran away. Some said his mother left him on the bus and never came back." "Where was he going?" Sarah asked. No one knew. All he had was the toy and a ticket. Sarah leaned forward. "A ticket?" Father Wilkins nodded. "Yes, in his jacket pocket. It said one word." Sarah held her breath. "What word?" He looked at her and whispered, "Home." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking of Jacob sitting alone in that seat, clutching his teddy bear. How long had he been riding the ghost bus? How many years had he waited for someone to notice him? She made up her mind. She had to find him. At midnight, she walked to the bus stop. Fog was already rolling across the road. She waited on the bench. She held a flashlight, her notebook, and something else, a small teddy bear she bought from the local toy shop. After half an hour, the familiar sound came again, an engine. The black bus rolled out of the fog, stopping in front of her. The door opened. Sarah stepped inside. This time, the passengers didn't stare. They simply sat, quiet, tired, lost. She walked slowly through the aisle, stopping at seat number 9. He was there. Jacob. He looked just like he did before, tiny, pale, eyes full of tears. He looked up at her. Sarah knelt beside him and gently handed him the teddy bear. "This is for you," she whispered. "I think you've been waiting for someone to bring you home." Jacob didn't speak, but he took the bear. Then, for the first time, he smiled. Suddenly, the bus shook. The lights flickered. The fog inside the bus grew thicker. Then the driver appeared at the front, rising slowly from his seat. "You don't belong here," he growled. "This is not your place." Sarah stood up. "No, but he doesn't belong here either." "He was forgotten," the driver hissed. "He's mine now." "No," Sarah said firmly. "He just needed to be seen, to be loved, that's all." The driver's eyes darkened. Then the passengers began to stand, one by one. They didn't attack. They simply stood beside Sarah, and they faced the driver. For the first time, he looked afraid. The bus began to fall apart. The windows shattered. The fog turned into wind. The whole bus shook violently. Then it was gone. Just like that. The passengers were gone too. Only Jacob remained. He stood next to Sarah, holding the teddy bear. He looked up at her and whispered, "Thank you." Then he faded, slowly, gently, like morning mist under the sun. Sarah stood alone in the dark. The road was quiet again. The bench was empty. And the fog began to lift. She walked home tired but calm. Another soul had found peace, but deep down she knew. The road wasn't finished, and neither was the bus. The village was calm again. The fog still came, but it was thinner now, so light it almost looked like smoke from a candle. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a little peace. She had helped 3 spirits find rest. Mary, who wanted to go home to her mother. Thomas, who died suddenly and never had time to say goodbye. And little Jacob, the child with no voice, waiting for someone to love him. But she knew it wasn't over. There was still something wrong with the road. Something deeper, darker, and she still didn't understand the driver. Who was he really? One morning, Sarah went for a walk through the woods near the crash site. The fog had returned, soft and gray, curling around the trees like fingers. Suddenly, she saw something strange between two tall pines. A mirror. A full-length mirror standing, upright in the middle of the woods, no frame, no support, just there, like it had grown out of the ground. Sarah walked closer. Her reflection was there, but it didn't move exactly when she did. When she raised her hand, the reflection moved a second later. When she stepped left, it stepped right. Then it smiled. But she hadn't. Sarah gasped. The reflection slowly changed. Her face disappeared. The mirror became dark, and inside it she saw something else. The bus. Driving through a foggy road. Endless. Cold. Full of shadows. And then she saw the driver's face clearly for the first time. It wasn't human. Its skin was gray and stretched too tightly. Its mouth was too wide, like it had been cut into his face. His eyes were black holes, and behind him, in the mirror, were hundreds of lost souls. Sarah tried to step back, but she couldn't move. The mirror pulled her in like a vacuum. The fog around her thickened. She couldn't breathe, she screamed. Suddenly she woke up. She was back in her room. Was it a dream? No. Her shoes were muddy. Her jacket was wet. She had been there, and now she understood something. The bus was not just a ghost vehicle. It was a trap, AED, prison between life and death. And the driver was not just a man, he was something else, a keeper of lost souls, feeding off their pain, using the fog to hide his road. And if Sarah kept trying to help the spirits, he would come for her next. That night, she returned to Father Wilkins. She told him everything. He listened carefully, then looked at her with fear in his eyes. "You saw the mirror in the fog?" he asked. "You know about it?" He nodded slowly. "It's very old. Some say it shows the truth. Others say it shows what's to come. And some believe it's a doorway to the other side." Sarah whispered, "The driver? He's not human, is he?" "No," the priest said. "He never was. He pretends to be a man. But he's something older, something that collects the forgotten." "Then how do I stop him?" she asked. The priest looked down. "You don't." Sarah stood. "Then I'll try." At midnight, Sarah stood at the bus stop again. The fog returned, thick, cold, and so did the sound of the engine. But this time, she was ready. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. She was going inside. As the black bus pulled up and the door opened, she stepped in without fear. She looked at the driver and said, "I'm not leaving until I know the truth." The driver didn't smile. He only whispered, "Then welcome to the last stop." Sarah stepped onto the bus. The door closed behind her with a deep hiss, and everything went silent. The air inside was cold, not just winter cold, but deathly cold. The kind of cold that lives in places forgotten by time. The driver stared at her through the rearview mirror. His black eyes watched her, never blinking. Sarah walked slowly down the aisle. The seats were full. Every passenger she had seen before was there. Mary, Thomas, Jacob, and many more she didn't know. They all sat, still, all looking forward, all waiting. Sarah turned to the driver. "Where are we going?" she asked. The driver's voice was low and cold. "To the last stop, where the forgotten go forever." She shook her head. "No, not today." The driver chuckled, but there was no joy in his voice. "You think you can stop what has always been?" Sarah didn't answer. She walked to the middle of the bus and stood beside Jacob's seat. "I've seen what this is. This bus isn't here to help anyone. It's here to keep them trapped." The fog outside grew darker, thicker. "You feed on them," she said. "You feed on their pain." The driver didn't deny it. He only said, Pain makes them stay, hope makes them leave, but no one leaves this bus. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out the locket, the teddy bear, and a small photo of the crash site she had printed. She held them up. "These are their memories," she said. "Their stories. I know them now. I know their reasons. And that means they can go home." Suddenly, the bus shook. The windows cracked. The lights flickered. The passengers began to turn their heads, slowly, toward Sarah. Their eyes were different now, not empty, not lost. Alive. The driver stood from his seat. His body twisted as he turned to face her. His true form began to show. His skin darkened. His fingers grew longer. His face stretched and melted like wax. He was no longer pretending to be a man. He was something ancient, a creature made from sorrow, fog, and time. "I will not let them go," he hissed. "They are mine." Sarah closed her eyes. She whispered, "Then take me instead." The bus went silent. The creature paused. "What?" "Let them go," Sarah said. "Take me. I'll ride the bus. I'll stay. Just let them be free." For a long time, there was only silence. Then, the creature smiled. "Very well." He snapped his fingers. The doors opened. One by one, the passengers stood. Their faces were calm now. Mary walked past Sarah and gave her a gentle smile. Thomas nodded once with his broken neck. Jacob clutched his teddy bear and whispered, "Goodbye." They walked off the bus and into the light beyond the fog, and then only Sarah was left. The creature laughed. "You're a fool." But Sarah didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the rear of the bus and smiled, because behind the last seat, there was someone else. Father Wilkins, but not his living self. His spirit. He stepped forward and held out his hand. "You don't have to do this alone." More light appeared inside the bus. The creature screamed in rage, his body burning in the glow. "You don't belong here," he howled. Sarah stood tall. "Neither do you." The bus began to shake harder. The fog turned into fire. Light filled every seat, every corner. The creature screamed louder, twisting and fading until he exploded into dust and shadows. The bus dissolved. The fog vanished, and the road became clear. Sarah woke up on the ground beside the bus stop. The sky was blue. The sun was rising. The air was clean. The fog was gone. For the first time, truly gone, she stood slowly. No pain, no fear, only peace. In the days that followed, strange things happened in the village. People said the road near the woods was no longer cold. Birds returned. Flowers grew again. And the bus stop? It was torn down. No one needed it anymore because the lost were no longer riding. They had reached their final stop. And Sarah? She never saw the bus again. But sometimes when she walked past the trees, she heard laughter, children's laughter, warm, soft, and she smiled.